Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this webinar hosted by CCN and PwC. My name's Owen Mapley. I'm the Chief Executive of Hertfordshire County Council, and I've been working with colleagues from PwC, from CCN, and from a range of councils across the country to put today's report together. We're delighted to launch this report, the Local Government Workforce of the Future. We're really thrilled as well that so many of you have chosen to join us. This topic and workforce and the challenges and constraints and opportunities around workforce couldn't be more topical, because we know that getting good quality people to come and work in local government is absolutely crucial to all of our missions to deliver for our local communities. We'll be sharing it via CCN social media afterwards, and we think this is the start of a conversation. So if you're interested in this, please do share it, share the links, put your own comments in there. We want this to contribute to a debate. We certainly don't think it's the final word on these topics. We'll be running through with some presentations from colleagues to just bring out the key features of the report in a moment, but we'll also have a panel Q&A later on. So if you've got questions, please put them in the questions tab on Zoom. We won't be using the chat today, so if you've got a question, please do post it there. So we all know that within all of our local communities, all types of local government play a massive role in providing services that form part of the fabric of those local communities, supporting individuals and families, whether to provide a bit of additional help every now and then, or to help address some fundamental challenges with people who need additional support, either routinely or at times of crisis. We know that the breadth and diversity of those services that we offer and the breadth and diversity of those communities we serve mean that it's absolutely critical that we can attract in a huge range of skills, experiences, people with different lived experiences, heritage into our workforces to make sure that we can best serve those communities. We know that it's been increasingly difficult in recent years to recruit and retain, but it's absolutely essential that we do, so that we get good pipelines of talent, so that people coming in can both provide great service, but also be incentivised to maybe develop careers in local government and rise up through the ranks, and some of them, I don't know, maybe even the chief execs of the future. So the report that we're launching today, I think, is looking at the nature of those challenges that we're facing. It's informed by a huge body of evidence. We were delighted to get more than 6,000 colleagues currently working in local government to fill in a questionnaire and tell us about what motivated them to come in and stay in local government. It also identifies a few actions that we think councils can take, both on their own, but also working together as a sector to support this. And we know we're not the only ones talking about this. A number of different bodies are looking at workforce issues, so we're delighted to add to the conversation. I'm joined today by some colleagues. I've got a colleague, Chief Exec, Rachael Shimmin from Buckinghamshire Council, who'll be giving us her perspective in a moment. But first of all, I want to hand over to Paul Deegan, who's a partner at PwC, who the CCN have worked really closely with to produce this report. Paul, over to you.
Many thanks, Owen, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Deegan. As Owen said, partner at PwC, and I look after our local public services and health industries practice. I wanted to do three things. Firstly, give you a bit of context around the report and why we are doing something around workforce. The second is, what do we actually do? And the third is some of those emerging themes. And I'm going to hand over to a colleague of mine in the team, Erica, who's going to take you through some of the specifics and the details and the findings of the report itself. So you may recall about 2 summers ago, in the summer of 2021, PwC did some joint thought leadership with the CCN back then around the future of local government. In that report, there were 4 emerging themes, which I won't go into now, but they included workforce, technology, communities, and workforce. And we always talked about this with the CCN, that we wanted to go into one of those themes and do some detailed thought leadership into one of those. It became very clear when we were talking in a workshop all around workforce, again with the CCN at the conference in November 2022, we had a group of about 50, 60 chief execs and leaders in that workshop, and it became very clear that workforce is already in the top 3 of most people's issues. As we approach the start of this 2024 period, it has become really clear that it's probably now up there amongst the top 2 of all issues in most authorities, aside from obviously the challenges around finance and funding and balancing the books, which pretty much across most councils is there right now. So we agreed about 6 months ago that we would do this thought leadership with the CCN again, and I'm pleased that we're able to launch it today. So workforce itself, as you're probably aware, is impacting across most sectors in the country. And there are many issues which are quite generic that are the reason behind that. Very, very many macro issues, particularly around the onset of AI, the economy and where it is right now, post-pandemic trends, and also potentially the consequences of Brexit. But within the local government sector, we think there are some very specific matters that are affecting it arguably more severely than many other sectors. They will include the demand pressures that local government is experiencing, particularly around the social care world, and they continue. The last decade, as we've seen in our report, local government has arguably lost around a third of its workforce. The funding struggles continue, and with those funding struggles and the financial challenges, being able to pay competitive wages out there in the market with other sectors is a real challenge. There's most certainly a specialist skill shortage, and arguably there's a limited demographic spread and an aging workforce. As we found in our research, less than 5% of the workforce in local government is under 25, and around 67% of the workforce is above 40, which gives you a sense of the feel of that aging workforce. So what do we do in the report? Well, we've had really comprehensive engagement. As Owen mentioned earlier, we've talked to a whole raft of chief execs, a whole community of HR directors. We've run a whole series of workshops. We've had focus groups of those in the sector in their early years in the workforce to get their perspective. We've done a lot of desktop research. We've used also a lot of our own analysis, our activity analysis and data that we've collected over more than the last decade across local government, working with different local authorities. And indeed, as Owen pointed out, we did a very comprehensive survey with over 6,000 respondees, really helping to get to some granularity and understanding about the thoughts of today on the matter of workforce. Now, the report itself is peppered with some really good examples across the sector of where individual councils have been doing things to further advance some of the challenges around workforce and to deal with them. So what are the emerging themes? Well, there were 4 key research areas that we looked at. One around purpose, one around values, one around brand, and then the last one was around skills and capability. Now, Erica's going to take you through some of those in more detail, but just to tease you a little bit with a couple of highlights. Aside from pay, arguably right up there on the agenda for people in the workforce was flexibility in their career and clear career pathways. That's a very strong emerging theme. Another thing is that trust in government is down, and that's come across in our own Future of Government report. However, trust in local government is faring better. So I think that's a positive. And a data point I want to leave you with here, which is really, really rich, and there's a lot contained in this, is that 65% of those in the workforce feel that the perception for those outside of the workforce of being attracted to being and working inside local government is not a good perception. However, 73% of those working in the workforce in local government would recommend it as a great place to work. So there's a really interesting answer in there somewhere around views, perception, brand. And Erica will come to that a little bit later on. So in terms of the findings, we have explored some opportunities, some solutions, and they are principally around 3 key areas. One is around what can the sector do as a whole, as a collective, together. The power of that, we've seen that in some other sectors. What can you do particularly around brand and promotion of recruitment? Another is the continuation of localised effort. What can you do there? And one of those, for example, that we highlight in the report, and there are many, is, for example, in Surrey, where they've done some video recruitment campaigns, really challenge the stereotypes and help to appeal to those that are underrepresented in the sector. And that's been very, very successful. And the third area around solutions and opportunities around partnership beyond the local government sector, perhaps with the education and skills sector or others or other businesses, in order to support and help with career pathways. One thing's very, very clear is that workforce is right up there in the top issues of today affecting local government and its future sustainability. And we'd argue that a fundamental rethink around workforce is required and immediate action needs to be taken. Erica.
Thanks, Paul. So just to add some flavour to some of the themes, the 4 themes that we've been using to help us structure our thinking and research whilst putting this report together. So on purpose, and this is, by this we mean why people choose to work in local government, and importantly why they stay. 45% of the respondents to the survey that Paul mentioned is stated that they have a really clear passion for working in the sector. And whilst quite a lot of them said that they expected to be there for the next 10 years, around a quarter said that they would probably stay for less than 4 years. So there is clearly a sort of sense of people not necessarily seeing local government as being a longer term career opportunity for them, which obviously I'm sure everyone who's listening would disagree with, but obviously that is the perception at the moment. And that career pathways and flexibility were clearly stated in our research as being key to retaining some of the talent that local government is attracting. Values, so organisational values are incredibly important to job seekers, and this theme sought to understand a bit more about how do people see the value of local government, how they align that with their own personal values, and what that means in terms of, again, attracting and retaining that future workforce. And the majority who responded said very clearly that they were very proud to be a public servant and work in local government. And that is a key kind of opportunity for the sector. If it's possible to build and amplify that sense of purpose and contribution, then that is a key kind of attraction for people coming into the sector and staying. Brand is something that was a really interesting kind of aspect to explore. As Paul said, the kind of trust in government has waned somewhat in recent years, but local government less so. But there is absolutely something about understanding why people feel that working in local government is so rewarding, but actually the sort of perception and misconceptions out there in the public domain are not as positive. And that is certainly something, whilst undertaking this research, we talked about in terms of those people who've been contributing to it, about how we might address that. A Forbes report recently said that 75% of job seekers check out an organisation's reputation before they make a choice about where they work. And so this is really a kind of key aspect of, building on that brand and making it a more attractive sector to work in. And then finally, the last theme was around skills and capabilities, and what the learning and development requirement would be to ensure that existing and new employees are able to adapt to evolving environment, to learn new skills, to develop their own career pathways. And a sort of really interesting aspect of this is that respondents felt that, and in some of the focus groups we met with, felt that actually they had a lot more to offer than perhaps their professional or existing experience might suggest, and therefore being able to be more flexible and expand those career pathways and create different opportunities would certainly be an attractive offer for people who want to remain as a public servant and make a wider contribution throughout their career, rather than just at certain points, be that earlier on or later on. In the call to action, As was already outlined, there were three sort of buckets that we put the call to action in as it kind of transpired through our research. One is about sector-wide. A couple of key points that probably pull out, but although there are quite a few in the report to kind of digest and think over. One is around greater powers over locally being able to influence the skills agenda. So being able to have a bit more say in terms of what is required in terms of meeting skills and capability gaps through the providers locally, but also as a sector overall. Branding and how local government is positioned in the public sector more widely, how it's seen in terms of being an attractive career opportunity is another. More locally, kind of early engagement using local educational institutions, universities, schools and so on, and being much more on the sort of, I suppose, front foot in terms of engaging with people early so that they can see the opportunities that might exist for them post-education. And then in partnership, greater investment in terms of how to work with local partners, both in terms of the public sector, but across sectors, different workforce models, and how the local government might actually think about what the opportunities are to create a workforce strategy for the place, as well as for their own organisations. I'll pause there and hand over to Rachel now for her sort of reflections from a Chief Exec sector perspective.
Brilliant, Erica, thank you, and lovely to join everybody here on what is in Buckinghamshire a fairly cloudy Monday, but not to worry. Hope you've got a real flavour for this research, and please do download and have a read of it. Now, I'm just going to share some reflections with you in my slot, and I want you just to think about whether or not you've got questions on any of the content so far. General observations or comments also helpful, so we can talk about those. So let's just think about local government. Now, would we ever create an organisation called local government with that plurality of roles and challenges today? Well, probably not. And in one of my sadder moments, I once sat down and tried to come up with a local government job title for every letter of the alphabet. I think X defeated me, but every other one I managed to get something for. So whether it's an archaeologist or a zoological inspector, see what I did there, we've got such a massive variety of roles. Now, one of the things the research says really clearly is that all sectors across the country are facing recruitment challenges. So actually we're in the pack, aren't we? Because we're facing challenges too. The issue for us, though, of course, is that we've got such complexity of service offer and such significant skills shortages and people shortages in areas that are actually part of our statutory responsibility. So there is some very focused thinking I think we need to do around some roles in particular. So whether they're planners or social workers or solicitors or educational psychologists, we've got some very distinct challenges. Coming back to the why, though, so why do people bother coming into this thing called local government? And the research is really clear about that, about the value proposition that people have for themselves and how they interface with employment. So purpose, values, brand, skills and capabilities. And on that brand topic, I remember doing a joint inspection of an organisation that was in the press for all the wrong reasons, actually, and talking to some colleagues who worked in that organisation about how it felt. And they were really clear with me that they felt quite embarrassed to find themselves on the front page for all the wrong reasons. So even when we do find ourselves in that situation in local government, and we will at various points, we really need to think about how we are positive with our colleagues and ourselves about the work that we do, because the work we do is so, so important. The for how long question is an interesting one, isn't it? So in this research, there are some statistics about how long, particularly some younger people, stay in local government. And I've reflected on that quite a bit and thought, does it matter? Does it really matter? Because when I've met with graduates on graduate trainee programs, what they've said to me is, actually what we want, Rachel, for ourselves is a bit of a portfolio career. So we're quite interested in coming and doing this for a bit and getting our head around what you lot do, but actually then we'll probably flip into something else and something else and something else. So there's a bit for me, which is about how do we think about the careers we offer, about how flexible we can be, and also how we can really help people transition in and out of our workforce. You do not have to be a local government lifer to do well in local government or to enjoy local government and working in the sector. And actually there's enormous amounts to be gained by that cross-fertilisation. So people coming in to our organisations from other organisations and also going out, whether it's on a full-time basis or as a trustee or a volunteer, and really sharing what they know about communities, places and individual services. But there is quite a bit of push and pull, and I think the research flags that. And in this context, I'm thinking about pushing out. So why would you push out away from local government? Well, the financial challenges are really clear for all of us, aren't they? And alongside that, there is increased level of pressure from council taxpayers who bluntly pay an awful lot of council tax to see their services actually reducing rather than increasing in volume. Very difficult decisions for us all at the minute in budget time. And what that pressure brings, of course, if you're on the front line, is often some quite angry and irate people. So there's something for me about, do we understand how to equip people to have really difficult conversations? So you start to get into the core skills and attributes that you need to work in local government. We've mentioned already salaries, and salaries are always a really tricky issue for us, aren't they, in local government? Because the truth is, every time we put another percentage on the pay bill, we've got to find that money through a reduction, usually in services, or an increase in income. And for politicians, there's always a really difficult balance in relation to how do we fund and pay for our workforce and stay competitive. And sometimes we don't help each other because we will, if we've got a shortage, increase salaries, and then there's inflationary pressure. How do we pay people the right salaries whilst at the same time provide services that, of course, depend on those individuals to run them? Of course, on the plus side, we've got such a tremendous diversity of roles. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is how we help people move across roles. Now, whether that's internal recruitment within a pool of people who are actually very able, but may not have happened to work in housing all their life, but have got absolutely the right skills, aptitudes and ability to learn to move over, or whether it's using people to work on cross-functional projects in areas that they might never have thought of. So, you know, my senior manager for Looked After Children is helping us think about how we work on our rights of way and footpath access for people so that the countryside is open to everybody. Now, there aren't many industries either where you could have that access to that massive diversity and scope of issues and services that matter to people. So how are we helping people understand when they come into our places at every level, actually, that there is a tremendous opportunity for them to get involved within the council and across the council, but also with external partners? How are we using our ability to do volunteering, coaching and mentoring to coach and mentor one another, but also across the sector to really develop people so that there's a value add of being part of local government that you wouldn't always get in every other sector? And how does the Gen Z approach to, actually, I want some moral purpose and mission, but I'm not saying I'm going to do that forever. How does that feel for those of us who have been used to seeing people in local government for years and years on end? Are we comfortable with that? Are we going to challenge ourselves? Are we going to push that out a bit? And how are we going to recruit a more diverse talent pipeline? So one of the things that we've done that I'm really proud of is that we've recruited people who are in prison, released on temporary license. We've got about 5 people working in our services at the minute. We hope to give them permanent contract options when they are released, because we want a wider pool of people. We're doing try before you buy so that people can meet teams and get a warts and all view of what working for us would be like. And we're working with our regular group of staff to understand from them what makes us a decent place to work. So are we holding the mirror up to ourselves as organisations and really thinking that through? My final comments, I guess, before we go to questions, comments and observations, is that we've got to really, really challenge ourselves as employers around how we're going to recruit people, what we can learn from other sectors. I was talking to a chief exec of a big building company earlier today. He's got exactly the same issues in terms of a lack of diversity in his workforce as our chief fire officer has here. So what is the learning, and how can we learn not just across our sector but into broader sectors? How can we really make sure that people understand the broader capabilities. Of course, we're always going to need people with specific qualifications and aptitudes. You can't be a social worker and a planner without having qualifications in both. Of course you can't. But actually, as you progress through organisations, you can, because of your skill set, because of your experience, move into different types of work and do those very successfully. So what is our flexibility? And finally, I think we've got to talk ourselves up. There is no question that working in local government is challenging. The money at the minute is driving us all crazy. It's totally unsustainable. We'll have to have a different solution somehow. But absolutely, we must never, ever lose sight of the really amazing and positive things that we do, that we forget we do. And we need to talk about those things within our own organisations and across the sector, because we are making life-changing decisions and doing really quite amazing things because we've got amazing people working for us. And I'll leave it there. Thanks, Owen.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rachel. And what a great place to finish. Every time I talk to my colleagues, I've got to be saying what you do every day matters. And so that mission and purpose is really key.
Oh, Owen, you've just gone on to mute there.
Oh, I must have hit the spacebar. Sorry. So do pop questions into chat, into the Q&A function if you've got them. But just to give us a bit of time, we've got one question come in from, I think it's from Becky down in Sussex, I think. This concept of cycles of experience, Paul, is one that I've heard private sector colleagues talk about, but maybe not as familiar to us in local governments. So can you just expand a bit about what you mean by these cycles of experience?
Sure, thanks, Owen, and thanks, Becky from Sussex. I think, look, cycles of experience, often it's focused on the younger generations entering the workforce. But actually, it's as applicable throughout your career. How do you keep fresh and continually develop? What we have found, and it is particularly prevalent with, as Rachel was saying, actually around Gen Z and soon to be Gen Alpha entering the workforce, is the need and thirst for variety and understanding. They've got a real thirst for knowledge and doing lots of different things. And so cycles of experience is where you try and do something for a relatively short period of time within a sort of structured environment where you're then moved on to try and do something else. A bit of a program around this cycle of experience. Some of that can be structured, some of it can have choices. Sometimes it can be within the organisation, or picking up on one of Rachel's points, sometimes it could be facilitated and encouraged in a different organisation, but with the flexibility to then come back. This is happening more and more, and it really appeals to the workforce now entering the market. And I think it's something that if local government could employ, it would see a real uptick in the attraction for a younger workforce coming through. There is one thing that local government has that I think is arguably above all other sectors, is its richness and diversity about what it does and the different services it offers. And that's a really attractive thing if it can be promoted out there and people could get an opportunity to try and work in some of those different services to get a nice rounded set of skills as they develop.
That's great. Many thanks, Paul. We've had a pretty good question from Sital, who says, is local government looking at career returners? We often think in this sort of work about recruiting in new people at the start of their careers, or younger people at the start of their careers. But I think we saw in the research that the need to recruit people at all stages of their careers. So, Rachel, is that something you've seen in Buckinghamshire, looking at different age groups as potential recruits?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. So one of the things that we have done is segmented the needs of the different services. So we've done a return to social work programme, for example, for people who've perhaps left and want to come back, but perhaps are a bit nervous or are thinking actually might have changed significantly, or will there be a flexibility because I need that because I'm now at a different stage in my life. So I think that flexibility point and encouraging people to come back is important. It speaks to me, though, about a broader issue around confidence, people having the confidence to engage and come back or come in. So I would also say, if I think about, for example, neurodiversity, what are we as employers doing to encourage people who may be neurodiverse to come into the workplace and stay in the workplace? I was struck by a blog that one of our colleagues did linked to Neurodiversity Week, and what he did was he talked very, very powerfully about I felt able to say to my hiring manager, I am neurodiverse, and what that means in reality is these are the things that I'm going to need in terms of adaptations. They were entirely reasonable adaptations. There was no question that we wouldn't have been able to do them. And what he said was, you know, as a consequence of the employer being able to do that, I can perform really, really well in my job. So as well as issues around age profile, and of course ageism can work both ways, can't it? Younger folk as well as people who are perhaps a different stage of their career. I think we've got to be very open about a diverse group of people coming to work with us. And that's why I mentioned the prison example. You know, what about ex-offenders? What about parents who are returning? What about people who are neurodiverse? What about people who are from different background in our communities and how welcome and able they feel to engage, and what's our offer to them? So if I think about staff networks as an example, I know from feedback from colleagues, and you know, there'll be lots of people on this call listening who do exactly the same thing, so it's not just a made here comment. Our colleagues really enjoy our staff networks. So we've got LGBTQ staff networks, we've got networks for people from a Black and minority background, disabled people who are carers, we've got environmental staff networks. And again, that's about value add for me. It's about local government living its values for its workforce as well as its services out there. And if we go back to that sense of purpose, moral purpose, I think as many symbols, actions and activities that we have in place to demonstrate why we are appealing as an employer, the better.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Totally agree with that. And one perspective from my council, like many, we're struggling to recruit and retain people to work on special educational needs. The volume and complexity is up. It's a very emotional subject where it can be quite difficult work. But we've found that by doing massive recruitment exercise and actively encouraging people with lived experience, so we've got parents of children with special educational needs who are registering interest and coming to work with us to go through our innovative SEND Academy, and we're finding that we are getting perspectives and understanding that is way more than theoretical, and so it's really adding to the richness of our work. So I'm sure you could multiply that for a number of our sorts of services. One question that's come up about leadership. There's a question from Paul. So if I can go to you, Paul, from one Paul to another, were there any particular themes that came up around the challenges of leadership in this space?
Sure, thank you, Owen and Paul. So look, just a couple of things on this. I mean, one is those currently in leadership. How do you maintain a leadership workforce that's motivated, incentivized, positive about the future in the background of a pretty difficult decade plus, and many of those challenges aren't going away? So how do you keep that going? How do you keep that leadership feeling incentivized and excited about the future, particularly with a number of those cuts and difficult decisions needing to be made? I think part of that lies in some of the things we mentioned earlier around individuals' personal development and experiences and cycles of experience, even, you know, if you're, you know, later in your career, and what do you do? And I think that should be encouraged. But then there's also about the pool of people upon which you're seeking the future leaders. And I think that's come across through the work as well. How do you ensure, in the context of what's happening in the sector right now, that those future leaders are set with the skills and the capabilities needed for the problems that we've not got today, but we'll have tomorrow as well? How do we make sure they're diverse, they're rounded, they're representative of the workforce, not just the workforce, but the people that we serve, the citizens and residents that we serve, but they're equipped with those skills, the technology skills, the AI embracement, and arguably those generalist capabilities that are probably going to be needed more and more as we go forward.
That's great, thank you. And Eric, if I can bring you in, we've got a terrific question from Emma Prince, who first of all just shares her experience that focused on skills and competencies, helped Emma make the move from the education sector. But as she tries to encourage people in, that brand is really tricky thing to make as a real concept. And I know that was one of the major themes that we found in this report. So can you just share a little bit more about what we found about the importance of brand and maybe what more the sector could do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Owen. So that's a really great question. And there are some really good examples in the report and elsewhere, undoubtedly, about what local government and individual councils are doing to kind of address that and to really sort of essentially put themselves out there in terms of being, what they are, which is good employers with a diverse range of opportunities to be able to start, grow, develop, change your career, irrespective of what stage of your career you're at. I think there's a few things. One is that the reality is that the National Graduate Development Programme is great, but does not really meet the challenge and the demand that is in the sector. So some expansion or growing of that is kind of one opportunity to try and address that. As working in an organisation, and as also someone who's worked in local government for a long time as well, the being able to tap into schools, universities, colleges in particular, and bring on a cohort of hired apprentices is also really great. And we had a really helpful and interesting conversation with a group who are based in Lincolnshire Council, coming from all of those sort of different avenues, apprenticeships, graduates, people later on in their career, who talked about how they'd actually come into local government and what the kind of access to that is. And they talk really passionately about working where they work and why they do it and what they do. What isn't really coming across at the moment for lots of people, clearly, is that sense of I suppose opportunity and different types of jobs that people can do. I don't think anyone disagrees that once they're in it, and a survey book bears out that once you're in it, it's such a great place to work. People really enjoy it. It aligns with their values. They really want to kind of be part of it and be part of contributing to society, solving other problems, people's problems, kind of making a difference. But actually, that's not the perception that's happening on a day-to-day basis elsewhere. Other bits of the public sector, and frankly other sectors, could help to also build the brand of local government. Other bits of the public sector have very, very strong, enduring brands, don't they? People hold a picture in their heads, irrespective of whether it's real or not, of what it's like to work in different, be that armed forces or the NHS and so on, which is brilliant, and it should be like that. It should also be like that for local government. People should hold a picture in their heads about what the opportunity local government provides, and that would help a lot.
Yeah, we've all got a responsibility to share what local government actually is, rather than sometimes it's quite a narrow focus through national media or ignorant commentary. So the breadth and importance of the role it plays really key. So thanks very much, Erica. We've had a really good question in from Ruth, who talks about potential links with local further education or higher education institutions. You were talking a bit about that, Erica. Certainly, I think that one of the things local government does well is act as convener of place and partner of other organisations. So I think there's more we can all do to partner with those sorts of educational institutions, and particularly in a role where potentially more things are coming our way, like adult education through devolution deals, etc. I think we can all help to play into that idea of keeping talent local and demonstrating the breadth and range of options there may be. So is that something, Rachel, you're seeing locally, where sort of partnership between the local authority and those sorts of institutions could be fruitful?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. So I think there's also a real benefit in working with local colleges around specific career pathways and skills. So whether that is a particular qualification or the development of a social care academy kind of model, I think when you talk to the people that run those organisations, they're really keen to get involved. And most of us, given the abolition of the local enterprise partnerships, I guess, will be thinking about how we develop a place-based approach to skills and training that will incorporate the local government workforce, but isn't just about the local government workforce. But my sense is that local universities, local colleges are a really, really key partner for our workforce, but also for the broader residents that we serve.
Great, thank you. And moving on to a different subject we haven't touched on yet, I've got a question from Fran asking if there are examples of where we're seeing the impact of AI and whether this is impacting on workforce or skills people need. Certainly, I'm seeing growing examples of where the power of technology, particularly things like the large language models that are becoming more prevalent now, ability to search across huge quantities, whether it be case files or others. And so we're trying to encourage our colleagues to embrace these new technologies, learn about them, because typically we think they can be used to add to what our people do, where they can use their skills and experience and judgment based on insight that can come from large data analysis. But Paul, you must be seeing this in private sector as well. So with the local government slant, what's your thoughts about how things like AI will impact in this space on workforce?
Thank you, Owen. So look, I mean, a stat that I think is helpful for everybody to appreciate, it does vary a little bit across sectors and the type of sector and how white collar or blue collar it might be. But as an average, certainly the research done so far suggests that up to a third of the workforce in the UK will be impacted in some way by AI over the next sort of 5 or 6 years, potentially. That's actually less than many of our other European counterparts or OECD countries, but it's still significant in some way, which is important to take account of. And local government is not at all immune from it. And there are absolutely two sides to this. To boil it down, the reality is there will be fears around AI, and there's a real width to AI. People bandish it around like it's a term we all know, but the reality is it's everything from chatbots to large language modules to deep learning, machine learning, etc. And we all use it already in our everyday life, in local government, in the services that you run. It's already there, but at different levels. The boiling it down to the fear is, will it affect our jobs? Will we be out of work? And can we trust it? Can we trust it like we do human beings? On the positive side, the reality is it can help with our demand pressures. It can help with increased productivity. It can help with reducing the costs of some of the services that we provide. It can help with consistency, data control, all of those types of things. And it can arguably help provide some solutions that we haven't even yet thought of. So on balance, I think it's a real positive thing to be used by local government. And I think within the breadth of AI, I think therein lies some of the answers that local government probably needs for a sustainable future.
That's great, many thanks. And I'm sure that is going to continue to evolve really fast. So we'll all be looking to see how that impacts on workforce issues in the coming weeks, months and years. Eric, if I can come to you, I don't know if there was any evidence in the questionnaires or otherwise. We've got a question from Graham who says, was there evidence that colleagues are actually seeking clear career pathways and whether there's a potential support for the idea of developing and maintaining local government career paths, recommended development support activities, that sort of thing? Because I think certainly from my time in the civil service, that was a concept that was really strong in the civil service. So was that something that you got a sense respondents to the questionnaire were really looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So when asked what would encourage the respondents to stay in local government, pay was inevitably a bit of a factor, but 18 to 34-year-olds ranked career pathways as the second highest factor for them in terms of remaining in local government. And overall, some other aspects such as flexible working were kind of ranked it, but career pathways were particularly important for those who are earlier on in their career, not exclusively, but that was the highest sort of response rate on that particular question, and that's something that we kind of find everywhere. And certainly I'm sure we've all had those points in our careers where actually being able to think about what is next when you're a bit earlier on in your careers, particularly when you haven't got necessarily, it isn't quite as clear as it is in some kind of careers or particular sectors, then actually just knowing that there are going to be options, that is an open discussion, that you could move from, say, working in planning to working in transformation to working in, you know, a different part of the organisation, just gives it options, doesn't it? And I think there was also a bit of a question from somebody else around what's the value in working with partners to do some of that career pathway planning. Well, it essentially, it helps to place plan in terms of where there is similar demand in different neighbouring partner organisations, particularly in the public sector, and where you've seen a reduced kind of very hard to recruit roles. So even if you think about programme management, you know, they're quite hot in terms of being able to recruit to those roles now. That's going to be the case for, you know, ICSs, local authorities, you know, kind of LEPs, hospitals and others. Having a sort of sense of, so what is the demand in a particular place helps to plan for that, helps to kind of create a bit of a excitement around kind of those roles, helps to guide people through different experiences in particular kind of technical areas that they might want to pursue, not just in one organisation. They want to pursue another organisation, but they don't want to leave the public sector.
That's great. Thanks, Erica. Right, I think we're starting to run out of questions, so I'm going to invite each of the panellists to just give some final closing commentary, and then I'll say a few words and draw it to a halt. So, Paul, can I ask you to kick off?
Thanks, Owen. Look, we put the report together with CCN and colleagues because we thought it's a really, really important matter affecting the sector today, arguably up there in the top 1 or 2 issues. We want you to enjoy the report and to use it to catalyse the conversation and action. If I had to pick 2 things out, I think on a local level, every council should be looking at a fundamental rethink of its strategic workforce planning. What does it do? What's its offer like going forward? And on a collective level, I'd ask and pose the question, what more can the sector do together to improve its perception, its brand, and its recruitment campaigning across the country?
Great. Thanks very much, Paul. Erica.
Thanks, Owen. So I suppose to add to that, just to say thank you to all of those people that have been involved in helping us develop and write reports, both from local government, right across from directors of HR through to some of the NGDP grads that we talked to. It's been absolutely invaluable in terms of that input, and to everybody who responded to the survey as well. And I suppose the overwhelming kind of sentiment from us is kind of how passionate all of those people are about working in local government. So just want a big thank you to them.
Great, thank you, Erica. Rachel, any final comments?
Yeah, so I think Paul's right. We've got a responsibility to work at a local level because we know our own workforce considerations, we know our own places. I also think, though, that we ought to have a national local government workforce strategy. The NHS has got one. We need one. And we need to be able to have some help, given our diminishing resources, to think about this stuff, because it doesn't just happen on its own. It needs quite a lot of time and thought and handling and resource to make it work when you start to think about workforce. And therefore, you know, I'm a great believer in why do we have to invent things 150 times over? There will be initiatives, and we've put some of them in this report that we know works. It would be great to see a national readout of that stuff from an incoming government to really help local government get on the front foot in dealing with some of the workforce challenges.
Yeah, totally agree. And so final commentary from me, we're really proud of this report, but we're certainly not precious about it. We know that this is a view. There need to be others out there as well. So we just invite everybody to engage with it, have a look, see what you think. It's available on the CCN website to download. Because of the financial pressures we're all facing, we've had to put £1 million download price on it, but I think the value you'll get from it will pay that back tenfold. So massive thank you to colleagues at CCN, at PwC, and to everybody who's helped pull this report together. I hope you find it valuable. And if you do, please put that tweet, put that LinkedIn out there to see what you've got to say about it. So thank you to my colleagues on the panel. and thank you to everybody who's participated or attended this afternoon's session.